If you are watching this video, it's probably because you are about to interview with SpaceX. And if that's the case, I probably don't need to tell you how amazing the company is. They are literally trying to make our species multiplanetary, and that is amazing. But I will tell you this, if you watch to the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to do 5 very important things so that you succeed in your interview with SpaceX. The first thing is I'm going to talk about high-level culture mission fit so that when you are interviewing with SpaceX, you come across as a great fit. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a classic Elon Musk question that he asks in every interview to spot a liar. I'm going to tell you what that question is and how you can answer it so you come off as not a liar. The third thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share with you a story of somebody who interviewed with SpaceX, was a technical fit, but he missed out on an offer because he did not do well on the HR interview questions. I'm going to tell you what that question was, what he did wrong, and how you can answer it correctly. I'm also going to walk you through a bunch of different HR recruiter questions that they ask in interviews, confirmed how you can answer them. And lastly, I am going to give you a bunch of the technical questions they ask so that you can research, prepare, and be ready to answer them. I'm not going to tell you how to answer them because I'm too stupid to do that. I'm not stupid, but I'm not as smart as you, because if you're watching this video, well, you're probably a rocket scientist. Let's go. Hi, my name is Ben White with Ben Talks Talent. I've got 11 years experience in recruiting, interviewing, hiring, team building, and I am passionate about using my experience to help you become the best interviewer possible, land your next job, and maximize the opportunity from a pay perspective. Today, if you are coming to this video to hope to become the best interviewer specifically for SpaceX or learn about their process and what they do and how to succeed in a SpaceX interview, you are in the right place. Before we get into it though, do me a favor, take 3 seconds and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell. That way you never miss one of my videos. I drop 2 to 4 of these videos through my channel every single week, and they are all aimed at helping you for free. Now, I want to start with a quote because I think this quote is amazing. If you haven't, by the way, gone to SpaceX's website, Google SpaceX mission, and just go and look at everything they do. It is amazing. It is so cool. They do one of the best jobs I have ever seen about selling their company, on their mission statement or on their About Us page. It is like a tour de force on how to sell your opportunity. So when you're done with that video, definitely go check that out as part of your prep. But one of the quotes there really resonated to me because I think it's what SpaceX is all about. So it's from Elon Musk, and it says, you want to wake up in the morning and think that the future is going to be great. And that's what being a spacefaring civilization is all about. It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being amongst the stars. SpaceX is about making our species multiplanetary, and that is a big, ambitious goal. It's a big problem they are trying to solve. When I did my video on Tesla, and if you haven't seen it, I'll link it in the comments below, but definitely go watch that one after. They're all about solving big problems, right? And that's renewable energy. It's about reducing carbon emissions caused by current vehicles. SpaceX is all about getting to space. So when you're thinking through interviewing and what you need to project as a candidate, the first thing you need to be doing is thinking about problem solving, collaboration, and solving big, difficult problems. Now, the second thing I want to do is I want to talk about a classic Elon Musk interview question. Now, this has been confirmed on several different websites and interviews that he's done, but the question he likes to ask, and this is a question that probably many of his hiring managers like to ask as well, and that's tell me about some of the most difficult problems you have worked on and how you solve them. Now, Elon Musk's rationale in asking this question is, one, he wants people capable of solving difficult problems. But he followed this question up in an interview by saying, anybody who has solved a very difficult problem remembers explicitly what they did to go about solving that problem. So when he asks this question, or when a hiring manager asks this question, not only do they expect this problem to be big, impressive, complex, but they expect you to remember in a detailed fashion everything you did so that you were able to solve this problem. So when you're going about answering this, when you're going about explaining what it was you did, you need to make sure it's big. You need to make sure it was important, it was complex, and you better have a detailed list of everything that you needed to do to solve it, situations you came across that required further digging in to solve problems, and you better be prepared basically to do all of those things. This is also a behavioral interview question. Any question that starts with "tell me about a time" or something similar is a behavioral interview question in which, no pun intended, you need to use the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Take them through the situation, talk about the task you needed to accomplish, what was your specific action or actions, and what was the result. That's how you need to go about answering this question. But if you get asked this question, expect them to probe deeper. There are follow-up questions coming. You're gonna give your answer. They're gonna ask, how long did it take? What was the most significant obstacle you faced along the way? If you could do it over again, what would you do differently? So you can't make something up. You need to pull from a real example, and you need to be familiar with it because they are going to ask multiple questions. The next thing I wanna talk about is a real life candidate who made it into the process, made it pretty deep, but ended up getting knocked out because he was not a fit culturally. So the person who was talking through, this is from an article on Medium that you can find, but he was crushing the technical interview questions. He was a really great technical fit, but he didn't get the job because he was asked the question, if your manager is having a disagreement with a member of your team, how do you approach it? And his response was to kind of stay away and let them work out their differences. Ultimately, when he got feedback from the hiring manager, this is what did him in. What they were looking for is somebody who could jump in as a good team member and contribute to finding a solution. So he thought, you know what, I'll let them work it out. They're smart people, they're adults, they're capable of working through an issue. But what SpaceX was hoping to see was he was someone who was going to enter in, help them solve the problem, help them navigate a difficult situation, and then move forward as a team. When you're solving big problems, there is no time to be wasted. You want to be as efficient as possible, and sometimes that means being a really good teammate and contributing to a solution instead of expecting others to work through whatever issue they're having. I want to talk through additional HR and recruiting questions you are bound to get when you are interviewing with SpaceX. So I've got 7 confirmed HR questions I want to go through. So we're going to start with telling you what the question is and how to answer it. We're going to go by one until we get through all 7. Now the first one, what makes you think you are a good fit for SpaceX? This is a classic interview question, right? Why do you want this job? What makes you think you're a good fit? Why are you a better fit for this role than other candidates? It's pretty classic. It's pretty boilerplate. If you're interviewing, with just about any company in your field, it's likely you get asked this question. But you want to think about this specifically in the lens of somebody who is hiring for SpaceX, right? It's not just about why you're a good fit. It's about multiple things. So there's a few things I want you to hammer home when you get this interview question. The first thing is hammer home why you're a good fit, right? Think about the job description, think about your qualifications. You want to make sure they know that from a qualification perspective, you are a solid fit. You also want to talk about their culture, right? So teammate, collaboration, problem solving, how you're motivated by solving complex problems. That's why you're a good fit. So it's a 2-step approach here. It's not just about why you can do the job. If you Google people who have interviewed with SpaceX, you're gonna find tons of people who have interviewed with SpaceX who are great fits from a technical perspective who get passed on because they don't fit the culture. So when you're answering this question, it isn't enough just to say, I am technically a solid fit. Guess what? They are one of the most sought after companies in the world to work for. Everybody who is interviewing there is qualified for their role. But how are you qualified for their culture? So when you're answering this question, answer it in 2 parts. First, focus on the technical. Second, bring it home with why you're a good culture fit. You want to solve complex problems in a collaborative manner. So illustrate that. The second question they ask is, tell me about a time that you failed and what did you learn from it? This is another really good interview question that's pretty popular. And what they're looking for here is they're looking for authenticity. Everybody fails. Elon Musk has failed. SpaceX has failed. Everybody fails, but they're looking for somebody who's confident enough to tell an authentic story about how they actually failed. And then the key here, that's part 1. Part 2, how has it made you better moving forward? So talk about a real time that you failed. Now it can't be anything that's catastrophic, but something that's failed, something that's reasonable, something where you're like, yeah, anybody could make this mistake. But here's why I'm better today. Here's what I learned specifically when I had this specific failure and how now I have altered my behavior to be a more effective version of myself moving forward. That's how you have to answer this interview question. This next interview question, like, sorry, I get excited about these as an interviewer. I'm like, this is so cool. Tell us about a time you had to solve a problem when you had little to no information about it. This is like classic SpaceX to me, right? Because they're solving problems every day where they have little or no information. They're solving complex problems. It is blue ocean. They are doing things nobody has ever done before. So they are looking for people who are capable of contributing to that. So this is one of those questions where it's probably pretty easy to answer if you've thought about it. But if the first time you hear this interview question is in your interview, it is probably going to be really hard to recall a memory in which you did this and then effectively explain everything you need to get the point across. Now remember, tell me about a time, that STAR method: situation, task, action, result. But just prepare for this. Have this answer ready and talk about your discovery process. You were presented with a difficult problem. What did you do? How did you go about learning the things you would need to do in order to be effective in solving the problem or fixing it or whatever it is? So remember, have your solution or have your problem thought about. I probably write about everything that I did to become informed, and then how I use that information to take active and action in an effective manner. And I think that's really the key to doing this. Again, it's detailed. Every single account I've read, and I read tons of articles in preparation to make this video, is that SpaceX cares about details. High level, 10,000 foot view, that's not gonna do it for them. You need to specifically say, here's what I did, here's how I became effective, here's how I solved the problem, and if you don't do that, you're not gonna be successful. The next question is pretty common, it's pretty similar too, and it's what kind of challenges have you faced and how did you overcome them? This is kind of similar, right? Being asked to solve a problem that you don't have the information for, I mean, that's a challenge. But I would use it as an opportunity to show them that you solving that problem you just solved, right? The thing you didn't have information on isn't an isolated occurrence. It's a pattern of behavior for you because you are comfortable overcoming challenges. That is what they want. That is what they're looking for. That is what they're hiring. This is an opportunity for you to demonstrate, I've done this before, I am doing it again. So again, have multiple examples. When you go into an interview with SpaceX, if I were you, I would have like 5 to 10 problems you've solved in your career, and I would have a detailed recollection of how you solved them. I would type this out, I would write it out, and I would practice it and rehearse it before I was going into my interview, because the reality is they're gonna ask you about problems you've solved, they're gonna ask you about difficult situations, and they're going to want you to dive in deep and explain exactly what they were. The next question is a really interesting one. And the question is, if you were to be offered a job and have to quit your current job to join SpaceX tomorrow, what are 3 things your boss would miss about you? I've actually never heard this interview question before. When I did my research for this video, this was the first time I came across this question, and I love it because it gives you an opportunity to talk about yourself from your boss's perspective. But as always, when you're answering an interview question, don't just answer it flippantly. Think about it through the lens of what makes someone a good fit for SpaceX. So some of the things I would probably hammer home answering this interview question is I would look at someone who takes initiative, someone who is determined, right? They have determination, somebody who's got a desire to collaborate, someone who wants to help their team, someone who has passion for their work, right? These are the things that matter to SpaceX. Do your own research, go to their website, dig through it. But when you're answering this question, it should be a Venn diagram. What are your qualities? What are the qualities SpaceX values, and where is the overlap? In that overlap, find 3 things your boss would miss about you, and that's the story you need to convey when you're answering this interview question. The next question is kind of a classic one, but it's rate yourself 1 to 10 against other people who do what you do, or other people, your peers. I think they use your peers as the specific language they use. Here's my thoughts on this. SpaceX is going to have tons of applicants, right? They're not hiring the 4s and 5s of the world, they're hiring the 9s and 10s. So I would probably say 9 and 10. And if you have the goods, if you are truly a 9 and 10, you're gonna get a chance to prove it with all the technical questions and your background and all of that. So I'd be confident here, but I'd also be prepared to speak to it. Some people go, you know what, I'll do 6 because everybody has room to improve. I'd be really cautious about that. This is SpaceX. Why would they hire a 6? They've got a litany of 10s who are applying. So I would answer a 9 or 10, and I would be prepared to speak to your unfair advantage. What is it you do better than other people? What is it from your background that makes you a more well-rounded person? What is it that you've done that specifically positions you to be an excellent fit at SpaceX? I would rate myself strongly, and if they go, okay, why? I would be prepared to speak to it and have a good answer for that. The last one is a great one. It's very similar to a question I ask. I like to ask the question, what is your most significant career achievement, and explain it. Their question is, of all your projects, pick your favorites and explain to me your role, contributions, and lesson learned. This is classic SpaceX and Tesla for that matter. It's all about picking something you've done, explaining in detail your contribution. It's all about problem solving, contribution, doing something important and difficult and challenging, and then being able to relay to them in a believable way, because you know a bunch of details, what you've done. So this goes back to my earlier suggestion of having a bunch of examples of things that you've accomplished, writing them all out and making yourself incredibly familiar with them. Think about all the big things you've accomplished in your career, and then be ready to recite them. Be ready to go into detail. How long did it take? What was the end result? What was the cost savings for the organization? If you could go back and do it differently, what would you do differently? What was the aha moment that you had while completing this project? What was done by other people, and what did you specifically accomplish? You got to have the details ready. If you go through SpaceX and you don't have details, it's not going to work. You're going to have them. You've got to get through them efficiently. All these questions are not 15-minute questions where you take 15 minutes to answer. You need to move through in a fast, effective, and efficient way, but you got to have details. If you don't have them, it's not going to work at SpaceX. Now, the last thing here is I'm going to give you a bunch of questions that I don't understand at all, so I'm not even going to try to give you the answers, but I am going to read them all. And that way you can think about them, you can come up with your answer, and you can go to your interview prepared to answer the specific technical questions that'll make you seem like a qualified applicant. By the way, if you are still here and you are finding any value here, hit that like button. It is free for you. It helps me a ton, and it tells YouTube that I don't suck. So let's jump into the questions. So the first one is, what are composites? The second one is, what is the size of an integer on a 32-bit system? Third, what is a null pointer? The fourth question, and this one's kind of cool. I don't know the answer at all. Somebody leave it in the comments. If you know some of these answers, leave them in the comments, because I think that'll be helpful to people who watch this in the future. If you have a large, heavy object moving very, very fast, how do you safely slow it down? How would you go about a design for an electrical harness to protect it from a sharp object falling from above? By the way, I'm going to drop all these in the comment or in the description box. So you can actually copy and paste these, put them into a Word document, and write out your answers and rehearse them. That way you're ready to answer this for SpaceX. Do yourself a favor though. The one thing you don't want to do when you do that is you don't want to come off as overly rehearsed. If they think, he or she found this, they rehearsed it a bunch, and now it's coming off as robotic, it's going to be less impressive. So you want to think, like, when you're answering these, you want to, that's a good question. And then you want to go through their thought process as if it's happening in the time. So what I'd probably do, and then jump into it like that way. Okay, next one. How would you attach a sensitive instrument to a shaking surface? How would you find a cycle in a single linked list? There are all kinds of data structures out there, like arrays and heaps. Why can't there just be one that does it all? It's a great question. I've thought about that many times. Just kidding. What happens when you run a high current spot welding through a nickel piece touching a copper piece? What does happen? That's interesting. And lastly, this is the last technical question I have for you here. How do you regulate the temperature of something in space? What is your main limiting factor? Just reading through all those, it might as well be written in Aramaic for me. Like, I understand the words in a vacuum, like individually, but together, I'm like, I don't know what that means. But to me, when I'm looking through them, I'm piecing it together. They want you to demonstrate that from a technical perspective, you're the type of person who can think about things that are challenging, difficult, and explain it to others. And you don't shy away from it. You're interested in this, you're passionate about it, and just even hearing them excites you because you are the type of person who wants to solve big problems and you want to do it with SpaceX. Remember that. Thank you for watching the entire video if you've made it here to the end. I hope your upcoming interview with SpaceX goes well. And honestly, if you've made it this far, if you have listened to all of this, if you have taken the notes and you're willing to do the work to prepare, I know it'll go well. You've got this.